does that wear people down? Is that where you get the more salacious stories in politics? Not bad people necessarily going in, but people just feeling that they should be somewhere else and should be being treated a bit better.
I do think there are a lot of people, sort of Francis Bacon style, that are quite disappointed because they go in thinking, I'm going to be cabinet minister one day, and it starts with getting this constituency, which I'm interested in, and I've managed to find a second cousin who lived here once, so I've got this like local connection. And now I'm constantly having to go to like the agricultural show or raffles and stuff, and it's really starting to play out now when you see some of the seat selections that are going on, particularly in the Conservative Party, where there's this big push for really local candidates, lots of local councils being selected. But then that means a lot of people who feel like they've got a national interest and could lead the country one day and take on Kenny Badenoch or whatever, they feel like a little bit left out. And some people really, really enjoy the constituency work, like look at Theresa May, she's gone straight back to it. And some people don't so much. And I think one of the peculiarities of our system is that you have to do both. And William Hague has this great story when he was Foreign Secretary and Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State. And I think it was shortly after Cameron took the decision to bomb Syria. And he was over at the United Nations with Hillary Clinton, they went out for dinner, and she said, oh, come on, William, let's go out and do this thing. He said, no, I've got to get the plane back because Mrs. Jones's war in my constituency needs attention, and I've got to get back and deal with it. And she was just totally gobsmacked that that's a genuine part of his job as Foreign Secretary. I mean, on some of the corrupting points, some people don't need money. They manage to come in with it, and some people can live within their means, they don't have to worry. But I think what you particularly see is quite a high turnover of MPs and anxieties. They see their mates who have been booted out in their mid-50s now struggling to get a job on board or, work for the NFU or whatever it might be. And I don't think it's particularly seeing dollar signs that makes bad decisions happen. I think there's different kinds of corruption. I think having like a big Twitter following is very damaging. I think there are certain characters who've become like massive players in British politics in the last couple of years, who they didn't essentially have like a cabal of people from the ERG pushing them, they would not be maybe Home Secretary, I don't know. And that's like she's not done something. She's not taken money, but there is something slightly corrupting and interesting about the situation, for example, the Secretary found himself in, that is perfectly within the law, but is a kind of curiosity, I guess, of what is currently happening anyway.
Yeah, but ambition runs through your book, definitely. In fact, it's the title of The Winding Stair is from a Bacon essay. It says, "All rising to a great place is by a winding stair," and I suppose that idea of sort of slow, unsatisfying elevation. He really had a very long career of not being someone who would have novels written about him 400 years later. And I guess he felt that politics wasn't a meritocracy in that sense. I mean, and perhaps that's where the drama comes in. Because for Cook, politics wasn't particularly a winding stair; it was zoomed up.
No, that is true. I mean, Francis Bacon had the great trouble and joy of being born right in the centre of the kind of Elizabethan elite. So the person running the country under the Queen in the 1560s is William Cecil, who then becomes Lord Burghley, and his son Robert Cecil then takes over from him. And William Cecil is Francis Bacon's uncle. And so you come into that environment, and Bacon has met the Queen from a very young age. She has dubbed him my young Lord Keeper. His father, Nicholas Bacon, is the Lord Keeper. That is essentially the Lord Chancellor of the House of Commons. And so he knows he's brilliant. He's been acclaimed by the Queen as brilliant. He's expecting to, there aren't a lot of absolutely brilliant people around. He's expect him to make it very quickly to the top of government, as he can see his younger cousin, Robert Cecil, being groomed by his uncle to do. And so when that doesn't happen, in my reading at least, and I think the historical record shows, he's intensely frustrated. And he diverts that. I mean, the essays, Bacon writes the first essays in English in the modern sense, were astonishing work of genius. And people often think he kind of wrote Shakespeare as a result. And of course it's absurd that he wrote Shakespeare, and not least if you read his poetry. But Bacon is an astoundingly brilliant writer and stylist. So he's basically expressing himself in these other ways because he can't get his political traction. Cook, one of the reasons he can't is because Cook is taking all these jobs that Bacon thinks ought to be his. So Solicitor General, Attorney General, and so Bacon's sitting out on the shelf, fuming while Cook ascends. And so the winding stair is this idea that you may make it to the very top, but you may have to go sideways. You can't necessarily rely on any process of recognition of merit to take you upwards. And of course, in Elizabethan England, there was none. You have patronage, you have the Queen's favour, and you have roots to the top in the church, and that's about it. And if you can't make it in one of those, then you're not going anywhere.
Chris, you have in the Friends of Harry Perkins a very unusual politician who doesn't really seem to have much ambition. It's kind of a rump of a core within the Parliamentary Labour Party who are sort of true to principle, so we assume sort of slightly on the left. And this guy, Fred Thompson, doesn't think of himself even as a real potential MP, let alone front-bench politician, let alone Prime Minister, and yet he's sort of pushed into service. Would one actually come across someone with quite so little ambition in Westminster?
Well, I think there are examples. I agree with some people. There's quite a lot of ambition in Westminster, so you agree about that. But Alan Johnson, I would cite, was somebody who rose from very, very humble origins and seamlessly, and not ever pushing or lobbying, and he held in the end. And this is a man who left school with 1 O level, and his first job was stacking shelves in the supermarket on Kensington High Street, and who was born in absolute poverty. If you read Last Boy, which is the first volume of his autobiography, it's extraordinary. You'd think we were writing about he was writing about the 1890s, and yet he was a little lad who in the 60s was following the coal lorry around Notting Hill Gate, picking up pieces that fell on the ground to take home and put on the fire, and yet he held 5 cabinet posts in the end. And that certainly was not the result of ambition. It was Blair who spotted him. He was an official of the Post Office Union, and he rose quite quickly there. But the Blair who wafted him into Parliament, his magic hand, to that extent. Although I don't think he ever lobbied to that effect. I don't think it ever dawned on him. And then he held, as I say, 5 cabinet posts. Yeah. That's a quite extraordinary career. I won't say it's typical.
Yeah. It's amazing, Jesse, with your book, how much of what Bacon, especially in that essay of A Great Place, how much